Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the October 3rd, 2017 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. If you haven't already done so, copies of our meeting agenda are on the shelves conveniently located on both sides of the room. Please feel free to pick up a copy and you can follow along with tonight's proceedings. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to the items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment that is under item 5 tonight that is reserved for public comments and questions of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda. And when we get to that point, I will remind everyone of that opportunity. We have a lot of stuff to do tonight, a real action-packed agenda, so we're looking forward to all the excitement that we have this evening. But first, it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So I would like to ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Earlier this week, our nation suffered a horrible tragedy of senseless murder and violence in Las Vegas. And our hearts and prayers and thoughts go out to all the victims of that terrible, terrible, horrific event, as well as their families, as well as all the first responders and just regular citizens that stepped up beyond the call and lended aid to their fellow human beings in a truly dire situation. In recognition of those whose lives were lost and those who are still struggling to hang on to their lives, I'd like to ask everyone present to please join me in a moment of silence in support of those in Las Vegas. Thank you. With that, I would like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have a couple of sets of minutes to approve tonight. Those would include, the minutes of our executive session meeting from September 12th, 2017, and our regular village council meeting from September 19th, 2017. We'll take those together. If there are no changes, corrections, or comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve both sets of minutes, please.
Martello, I move that this council approve both sets of minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Those minutes are approved. I have a number of proclamations and recognitions to do here tonight, so this is going to be the fun part that I was talking about. First, let's begin with something that is near and dear to our hearts because this council has been engaged in the community planning process for some time now. We seem to have an ongoing, continuous community planning process, which is it's fine. It's kind of like diet and exercise. You should always do it to some degree. I would like to read a proclamation in support of Community Planning Month. Whereas change is constant and affects all communities, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas the full benefits of planning require public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States and its territories. Whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community and regional planners of the Village of Downers Grove and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public services by these professionals. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2017 as Community Planning Month in the Village of Downers Grove in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. And I'm certain that Mr. Popovich would be thrilled to come up and accept this proclamation as the head of community planning in our fine village. See, anyone can be the director. It stands there. Right. Head on.
Thank you, Mayor.
Happy Community Planning Month.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
All right, it's actually more like Community Planning Year.
It is, yes. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Not to be outdone, October is chock full of excitement. It is also American Pharmacist Month. And with us here today, we have a number of representatives from Midwestern University, a fine institution within our community, who we are glad to welcome every year when they come for Pharmacist Month. And I'm going to read a proclamation in honor of that. I'm sure that we would be devastated if you wouldn't join us for a photo afterwards with the proclamation. And then if anyone would like to make a few comments, on behalf of the College of Pharmacy, we would love to hear from you and tell us what's going on. I understand there's some changes this year with the health fair, something I'm sure the community would like to hear more about. I know that I risk personal illness and potentially death by holding off my flu shot until I can do it with someone from Midwestern University. Without further ado, whereas pharmacy is one of the oldest of the health professions concerned with the health and well-being of all people, and whereas pharmacists are specifically educated with a focus and level of expertise on medication therapy that exceeds that of other healthcare providers, and are ideally suited to work collaboratively with other healthcare providers and patients to improve medication use and outcomes by providing services through medication therapy management. And whereas the Midwestern University Chicago College of Pharmacy graduates approximately 200 qualified pharmacists yearly who go on to enter the healthcare system to practice patient-centered care. And whereas the American Pharmacists Association and the Illinois Pharmacists Association have declared October as American Pharmacist Month with the theme, Know Your Pharmacist, Know Your Medicine. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim October 2017 as American Pharmacist Month in the Village of Downers Grove and urge all our citizens to acknowledge the valuable services of pharmacists and what they do to provide safe, affordable, and beneficial pharmaceutical care services and products to all citizens. Thank you. So if you'd please like to come up, I'll be honored to present this to you. We are very pleased and privileged to have such a fine institution within our community. Congratulations. Oh, you gotta have a banner. Send you home if you didn't have a banner. Sorry. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. All right. Good to see you again. All right. Nice to see you again. All right tonight. Good to see you. All right. Look at the banner and I'll get out of the way. All right. You'd like to hold this. There you go. Great. Would someone like to say a few words, please? You want to be our guest.
Mayor Tully, Commissioner, and residents of Downers Grove. On behalf of American Pharmacists Association, Academy of Student Pharmacists at Midwestern University Chicago College of Pharmacy, I would like to thank you for proclaiming October as American Pharmacy Month in the Village of Downers Grove. The purpose of this proclamation is to recognize the impact that pharmacists make in the community. Pharmacists are the most accessible healthcare profession, and we provide services such as immunization, health screenings, and medication therapy management to ensure safe and effective medication use. As medication experts, we improve healthcare outcomes by reducing the amount of hospitalization and medication-related problems. Pharmacists play an integral role in the community, hospital, outpatient clinics, as well as research and development. When pharmacists are a part of the healthcare team, healthcare outcomes are improved. We care deeply about the health and well-being of our community and the Village of Downers Grove. In order to better serve the Village of Downers Grove, we will be hosting multiple mini health fairs throughout the year, where student pharmacists, along with healthcare professionals, will be providing health screenings, administering flu shots, and much more. The first of which will be at C-SPAR this upcoming winter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next, I don't have a proclamation, but we have something that is as cool, if not cooler than a proclamation. You probably have noticed it on the table in front of us. It looks like a very handsome trophy is not the right word to call it. Award recognition. And we need to do a little bit of celebrating here in town. As many of you know, historic preservation is a big mission of the Village of Downers Grove. Our motto is preserving the balance between tradition and progress. And we have been putting both out there through both words and actions. What we're trying to accomplish is educating folks about historic preservation, advocating for historic preservation in our community, particularly on a voluntary basis through members of the community themselves, and celebrating historic preservation both through recognition of those who have opted to landmark their homes to the village's ordinance, and also encourage folks to landmark and to really appreciate, not only for themselves but for the entire community and future generations, the importance of historic preservation in our community. So I think it's entirely appropriate that we celebrate something pretty darn cool that happened recently with respect to historic preservation in our community. And that is one of our very own grassroots not-for-profit organizations, grown and raised here in Downers Grove. The Friends of the Edwards House recently received the prestigious Richard H. Driehaus Foundation Advocacy Award for Historic Preservation. There was a very nice event that was held in the city, hosted by Landmarks Illinois, and obviously underwritten by the Driehaus Foundation. But it's important to understand what this is all about. And I have to confess that I was fortunate enough to have been asked to go down and join the award-winning Friends of the Edwards House group for their advocacy for historic preservation here in Downers Grove, from which we all benefit, and as mentioned, future generations will benefit. And was asked to speak on a panel with some other elected officials about challenges of historic preservation, some strategies that have worked in different communities, but both the state and municipal level. And it was really a wonderful evening, very educational, and we got to see a number of awards. Each year, Landmarks Illinois honors 9 outstanding examples of excellence in Illinois historic preservation with the Richard H. Driehaus Foundation Preservation Awards. And the goal of these is to inspire others to take action to preserve, protect, and promote historic resources. This is all made possible by a generous grant from the Richard H. Driehaus Foundation, which enables Landmarks Illinois to honor individuals, organizations, projects, and programs that promote historic preservation. So out of many different applicants, 9 were chosen. And the ceremony went through all of them one by one, and most of them were historic preservation projects where significant buildings that were at risk of being destroyed or had fallen into disrepair were revitalized and restored to their former splendor through community efforts and a number of different people who came together, both through expertise or contributions or just sheer force of will to make these things happen. And I had no idea where the Downers Grove contingent was going to appear in this presentation. And they started going through the different projects, and they were all just absolutely amazing. One individual was honored before they got to the end, and it was a gentleman who was like the patriarch of historic preservation for the Chicagoland area, including saving the Harold Washington Library and making it the landmark site that it is today, because it was at risk of being destroyed many years ago. And I was really thinking, wow, all these projects are just unbelievable, and this individual has such a legacy of historic preservation. I started to think, did they forget about the Friends of the Edwards House? Because these are some amazing projects. And what I then realized is that they had saved the best award for last, and that was the Advocacy Award, which was the last award that was presented, and it was presented to the Friends of the Edwards House. The award itself is sitting up there in front of us, and in a moment I'm going to ask a representative of the Friends of the Edwards House, and we have many of them here tonight, to tell us a little bit more about it. It is, I believe, a replica of the old Chicago Stock Exchange floor, which was something that, when it was lost, sparked a movement for historic preservation in and of itself. And so it is a symbol of things that have been lost, but also something to inspire others to make sure that other things are not lost to history, but can be preserved. And if you get a chance to look at it, I believe it actually has a working clock in it. So we'll come back to the award in a second, but I want to finish the story. So the last award was the presentation of the Advocacy Award to the Friends of the Edwards House, and that was the closing crescendo of the program. And on the way out, I was talking to one of the principals of the Driehaus Foundation, and I simply asked, I said, wow, those other projects that were honored beforehand were absolutely amazing. I just feel like our community was so honored to have been included. And she said to me, yeah, all those big buildings, those are all the sexy historic preservation projects. And you get a lot of people that work on them, but most of the people that are working on them are being paid. I mean, they're not all of them. Some are volunteering, but the architect firms and other ones, there's some revenue to it, and usually funds are raised in order to make these things happen. The most special award, and the reason why we saved it for last, is for people who just are passionate about it and through their own volunteer efforts come together and advocate for historic preservation without any expectation of any reward whatsoever, and frankly without any resources to speak of. Because that's what we as a foundation truly want to encourage and inspire, is that kind of grassroots, community-based passion for historic preservation. That you can't replicate, and it's very important to us to recognize that and celebrate it. And I thought, well, that's exactly what we're trying to do here in the Village of Downers Grove, is through celebration and education and advocacy, really inspire and raise the entire community to another level with respect to the importance and appreciation of historic preservation. And that was just a remarkable comment that I just wanted to share with everyone, that type of a project, the Advocacy Award, was reserved for this group. So with that, I don't have any particular remarks. I've already talked way too long, but I do want to congratulate the Friends of the Edwards House who all made this possible, and without a proclamation, because actually everything I just said would not fit on a proclamation. I want to thank, on behalf of the entire Village Council and the entire community of Downers Grove, the members of the Friends of the Edwards House. Tom Nybo, Kathy Nybo, Rich Cullivany, Cindy Zeski, Shannon Tully, Christine Martin, Bo Martin, Irene Hogstrom, Melissa Nissen, Ken Lerner, Bill Kunder, Amy Gasson, Chuck Holtzen, Byron Holtzen, and Heather Clausen. I mean, congratulations. It's amazing. And no proclamation can hold a candle to what you already have. So with that, I'll just invite one of your representatives to please come up and maybe share a few words with us. And then I'll come back to an arrangement that we've made so the entire community can appreciate the very impressive award.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually didn't prepare any comments, but I did want to echo some of the things you said. I was actually really moved during that ceremony. I wanted to echo what the mayor had to say, because you saw all these amazing awards and all these amazing projects, and some people that have been working on historic preservation their whole adult lives. So it was a great honor. I really... this whole thing is warranted by a wonderful team that worked together, that put their passions together. We're blessed to have a mayor and a village council that understands that historic preservation is an important differentiator for our town, something that actually draws people to Downers Grove. We have an outstanding working relationship with staff that we feel works right along with us. And as I said at the award ceremony, we really have to thank the historic homeowners. Certainly the village took the lead with landmarking the train station and both Main Street train station and Fairview. But it's really the homeowners that step up, decide to do something brave, and decide to do something for the generations. And that's what motivates our team. The whole idea that someone can look at this town 50 years from now or 100 years from now and said they had the foresight to save some of that. Because that's not something that's unique to, or something that is relevant with every single suburb. So thank you very much. We're deeply honored. This will sit in the library, from what I understand, to start out?
Yes, and then we are going to, since I didn't have a proclamation to hand you, I do want to invite everyone up for a picture holding the award. And then what we have discussed is since Village Hall does not have a nice display case somewhere, because it really is something that while it is yours, it belongs to the Friends of the Edwards House and it is the product of your blood, sweat, and tears. It's really something I think that to achieve that celebration objective is something that the entire community should be able to appreciate. Now, I know you wanted to pass it around amongst one another like the Stanley Cup, and I know who's going to have it first, but I don't think it's waterproof, so you might want to not drink beer out of it. So what we thought instead is that we spoke with the library, and they do have display cases that are open to the public to view, and we thought that it might be an appropriate place to park it for as long as you wish. Obviously, it's yours. You can retrieve it whenever you want. But I thought maybe even a display built around it, if everyone is with some pictures from the event and maybe some other indicators of what exactly it represents would be appropriate.
Excellent, outstanding.
So with that, let me invite everyone up for a picture. And we'll get the Stanley Cup in it. Now, I know you're supposed to wear white gloves when you handle this, but... So you can hold that or I'll get it out in front. Come over to this side. The lens isn't wide enough. Wonderful. Congratulations. It's the power of volunteerism, which we'll come back to under item 6 very shortly. Thank you very much. So that's the end of the proclamations and the recognitions and awards, but quite frankly, I wish we had things like that every week, and more and more often we do. That will then bring us to item 5, which is previously advertised as reserved for public comments of a general nature. At this point, if any members of the audience have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, I would invite you to please come down, tell us who you are, and we welcome hearing from you. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Shannon Tully. I live at 5413 Main Street in Downers Grove. This is Cindy Zeski. She lives at 1130 Franklin Street in Downers Grove. And together we were the co-chairs of the second annual Landmarked House Tour that took place on September 23rd. And the reason that we're here tonight is just to say thank you to those of you who participated. I believe Commissioners Earl, White, Wallace, and Mayor Tully participated in the event. And we wanted to say thank you to the community and all of the people in the surrounding communities that bought tickets and helped support our efforts with historic preservation. We had a record number of ticket sales, and it was very well attended. We raised a lot of money, and all that money will go to support historic preservation efforts in our village. So thank you very much. Sydney, do you want to say something? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good work. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Hi. My name is Jenny Garst, and I live at 5230 Farrar Court near Fishel Park. Similar to other areas in Downers Grove that are in low-lying areas and impacted by new construction and ever larger houses, stormwater is a large concern for the households on this street. In the past 3 years, we as homeowners have individually and collectively invested significant time and resources, some in partnership with the village, to put measures in place to improve the stormwater issues on our street. Unfortunately, it is still not enough, and our concerns are growing as plans will be submitted soon for a new home to be built on an empty lot at the end of our street. We also expect 2 more large houses will be built uphill of this new home when the house at 1108 Maple is sold. We know that stormwater regulations are frequently discussed in this forum. The group of neighbors on Farrar Court would like to encourage the adoption of enhanced regulations to minimize stormwater runoff from new construction. We feel Farrar Court is one of the poster children for this issue in Downers Grove, and we'd like to extend an open invitation to each of the council members to come to our street to discuss our ongoing individual and collective stormwater concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you for being here. Appreciate the invitation. We'd be happy to take you up on it. And yes, we often revisit the topic of stormwater regulations and whether they should be more strict than they currently are. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Sure, and I'll happily email all of you with contact information so that each of you can come out and speak with us more. So,
Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Go ahead. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Ed Pollack from Parkview Drive. I've been a homeowner here for over 30 years, and in all that time, I've never seen so much commotion about boards and trustees like over the past month. And by profession, I'm a management consultant, so when I hear some craziness going on, I always try to figure out if I can see what's going on. And I happened to be here a couple of weeks ago when Mayor Tully, when you were giving the explanation about the process you go through for selecting board members and the screening you go through. And frankly, I thought it was great. I thought it's a very good process. You look at both the mission and the other board members to see what makes sense as far as what you want in somebody new. You go through recruiting, you interview them, other people from the council will interview them, you take a vote. It all sounded great. And so it left me a little bit puzzled why there's still all these questions and all, as I was calling it, commotion going on. So I actually went back and looked at YouTube to watch that section again, your explanation. I thought maybe I missed something. And I think you actually touched on a very good point right at the very end there that I think is actually key. And so I actually have a simple suggestion. I think just a small tweak that I think may help quite a bit on here. And the comment you made at the end was you said that you believe in transparency and go out of your way to try to do as much as possible. So I thought that was actually a very key point. And so my suggestion is the week before, or the meeting before you're going to take a vote on board appointment, all you do is you have an agenda item to say, here's what the board position is, here's what I'm looking for in it, here are the leading candidates. I don't think you have to put everybody who's submitted their name, but I figure a week before you probably have 2 or 3 finalists. And then at that point, since it's an agenda item, you can get some public questions there. Now, since these are going to be people working in a public board and they'll be at open meetings like this will actually give you a good opportunity to see how they work with the public, because sometimes people, when you interview them one-on-one, everything sounds very good in private, and then you see them in public situations and you may change your opinion about which one's the better candidate. So by doing this, I think it does a few different things. One is, I think it's really a win-win type of situation. You get the extra transparency you're looking for. At the same time, people in the public get a chance to see who these people are. I think it gets rid of a lot of the mystery and questions about what's going on. I think it'll give people a better appreciation for how difficult it is to try to find the right people to put on these kind of positions. So I'm bringing this up just as a sincere suggestion as a way to try to help make things run smoother. So I hope you and the council will give some consideration and put some changes in place. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your giving that some thought and doing a little homework to share those comments with us. We do put out the names of the folks who are going to be appointed the Friday before the Tuesday vote. Like, for example, the board and commission members that we're planning on appointing tonight. But it has been suggested maybe we should just put that out a little bit sooner so that there's more time for people to see who it is that's being recommended for what. The commissioners usually get 2, 3, sometimes more weeks in advance to, as you point out, do whatever they wish. But the public maybe could use some additional time as well. It's a fair point, a fair question, and you're not the first person to mention it. What we are going to do as a council, especially given all the attention that has been derived lately with respect to board and commission appointments, is as part of a long-range action plan item that we had anyway, which was revisiting, as we occasionally do, about what is the proper role and function and utility of our various boards and commissions and what their role and mission and utility is and how they can best serve the community in that role, where we can provide training and other information with respect to those volunteers that participate, is as part of that process talk about other tweaks that can be made to the process that was outlined, such as earlier, putting the names out earlier, better contact with those who've applied, because I think what a lot of people understand is that for most of these boards and commissions, and don't quote me on this, there are anywhere between 30 and 50 people who have indicated interest for what may be one spot a year. And I don't think they realize that there's that many people who have expressed interest, and every year there's new people who express interest, that we can do a better job of communicating with those who are on the waiting list. So things like that have been suggested, and we're going to get together probably in a, maybe not a governance meeting, but as part of our long-range plan addressing boards and commissions generally, which we had planned to do before all the attention arose, and make that part of it. So those kind of suggestions and comments are most welcome and will absolutely be taken into consideration, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the public on general items? Good evening, Mr. Swimmer.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just a couple quick comments. First of all, several years ago, I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Popovich about some property I owned, and I don't even remember exactly what took place and why I spoke with him, but I do remember that I got very good service, professional service, and I'd like to thank him. I appreciate his service. As far as the Edwards House and their award, congratulations. I know being an advocate is sometimes a difficult position to take, and I thank you for it. So let me just tell you a little bit about my name. It's George Swimmer. I'm going to give the property at 4905 Main Street in Downers Grove. I have a couple other properties in Downers Grove, but I'll give that property. For about 25 years now, I've been involved in railroad safety. I've been investigating train accidents. Probably the first train accident, one of the first train accidents I investigated was one that actually made a national video. It was taken at Fairview Avenue in Downers Grove, where a metro train had stopped, a commuter train had stopped, unloads its passengers, and a railroad fan was taking a video, a film of the unloading. Apparently the locomotive was about to be retired. He was taking a video, and people were crossing. A Metro Express train came down the middle of the track, and a lady was crossing and killed her. Been investigating the number of accidents since then. I'm a member of a group called the DuPage Railroad Safety Council. So let me kind of just give you some overview of railroad safety, some of the things that have taken place. I've been in front of this council maybe 15 times over the years. A couple of the council members probably don't know me, but most of them do. I certainly know the mayor very well. Last week was Railroad Safety Week nationally. It started in Illinois several years ago, and nationally it was Railroad Safety Week. Metra is the commuter line that operates in the Chicago suburban area. It has a total of 11 lines. Some of the lines are owned by Metra. Some of the lines are contracted out. So Metra BNSF, which is the line that goes through Downers Grove, is a contracted service. 10 of the lines, with the exception of the Metra BNSF line, has a special operating instruction that if there's a train in the station or approaching a station, in the station, a commuter train in the station, or a commuter train is exiting the station, and there's an approaching train, it cannot enter that station unless very specific protocols are met. It has to stop. There has to be very specific protocols. That was difficult on the Metra UP West line. So what they did was they followed an FRA recommendation that if there's, first of all, commuters have to be channeled behind the gates. They actually physically have to be channeled behind the gates. There has to be a second train warning system in place that's not only a light that says second train, an LED lighting that says second train, there has to be a verbal warning also. That does not exist on the Metro BNS F line. They fly through the station at 70 miles an hour. Whether there's somebody, a commuter train is exiting the station, a commuter train is unloading in the station, they just fly through the station. The Metro BNS F line does not follow the FRA recommendation. It completely ignores it. So what's the outcome? We've had in Downers Grove, that I'm aware of, at least 5 second train fatalities. They take place all up and down the BNS F line. Last week at Clarendon Hills, with 2 police officers on the south side of the tracks at the station, a young lady, a 34-year-old lady, was dropped off by her mother. She sees a stop train in the station. She attempts to cross, and she's killed. So, last night, and I've urged this council a number of times, please, talk to the BNSF line. Let's do something. Let's make these crossings safer. And I heard that from the Edwards house that Fairview and Main Street are landmarks. Okay, that's great, but let's make them safer. If they're landmarks, we want them as safe as possible. And what we need is a better second train warning system in place. There's one that's out there, but nobody knows about it, except if you're in the railroad business. Nobody really knows about it. Let's have a better second train warning system. Let's channel the people, the commuters behind the gates. That's what the FRA recommends. Let's do that. So last night, first of all, what happened in Las Vegas, they have my prayers. That was a horrible thing. But anybody that saw Jimmy Kimmel, and I just started watching him probably over the last few weeks, and I'm really impressed with the gentleman. But he said, we're going to talk about it, but in the long run, probably nothing's going to be done. And at some point in time, a tragic event like this will happen again. So that's kind of the way I feel. I mean, I've been coming here for probably 20 years, and I keep talking about it. People keep getting killed, and I know that the BNSF line is like a different fiefdom from the village council. I understand all that, but somebody's got to do something. They got to make these crossings safer. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Swimmer. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Tully, Commissioners. My name is Amy Gasson. This is my husband, Dave. We live at 5320 Benton Avenue, and we are here tonight to give an update on the American Foursquares initiative. It's been a while since we've done that, so I think it would be helpful to kind of recap what we've done in the last year and a half and then tell you what's going on currently. The slide that you just saw was a great example of some of the American Foursquares that exist in Downers Grove. Basically, it was a very common house type in the early 1900s. Go to the next slide. So what we started out by doing was we initially began to wonder just how many Foursquares existed in Downers Grove because we saw a lot of them as we walked through the neighborhoods. So we set out and created an informal inventory of all of the Foursquares that we found, and it turned out there are about 130 Foursquares that currently exist in Downers Grove. So the map that you're seeing right now is shows all of the Foursquares where they're located. After that, we created a flyer, and we delivered it to all of the Foursquares on our list. You can see even the young children helped. I always say they're smiling in this picture, but they weren't actually smiling while they were doing all the walking. They fought over who was going to put the bag on the doorknob, though, somehow. So the flyer basically gave a brief history and the significance of the American Foursquare, and it asked for homeowners to please share their contact information with us so that it would create a network of Foursquare owners. And as of today, we're still continuously getting contact information from people, and as of today, we have contact information for more than 40% of the Foursquares in Downers Grove.
So one of the benefits of meeting some of these wonderful people are we occasionally get invited to tour their homes, which is great for us. We get to see inside some of these Foursquares, but as part of our initiative, we're also trying to catalog as many of these floor plans for these homes as possible. We've also given 2 presentations on the history and significance of the American Foursquare. The first presentation was sponsored by Friends of the Gifted. It was held at Ballydoyle. This, that's depicted in this photo, was sponsored by the Downers Grove Historical Society and was held at Emmett's, and we actually had almost 60 people in attendance at this event. Another event that we had at our home was an open house for Foursquare owners and supporters, and we had close to 50 people over the course of that afternoon that came through our home, and per one of the suggestions of one of the homeowners, we actually made name tags for them that had an image of their home on it for everybody to see. We've also sent out our second newsletter, so we try to do these once or twice a year. We've only been doing this for a year and a half, so this is number 2. But this is just to give Foursquare owners an update on what's happened and what's coming up, and some interesting factoids about some of the things that we've done.
So one of the things that we did not really have until recently was somewhere that we could actually put a lot of our information on. We had a Facebook page, but it is really limited to what we can do with it. So we are very excited and pleased to announce that the Downers Grove Historical Society has graciously offered to host a web page on their website for American Foursquares of Downers Grove. So if you go to the Downers Grove Historical Society's website at downersgrovehistory.org, you can click up on the Historic Homes tab, and there's a pull-down menu for the American Foursquares. And this is a screenshot of that page, which gives, again, just a brief history about the Foursquares. And then the best part is the map that shows up at the bottom. So now what's so wonderful is this map is more than a picture, it's actually interactive. So you can click on each of the icons, and it'll bring up a photo of the home, which you're seeing on the left side of the screen, as well as an approximate date of construction. And then if we have any history on the home that we've been given by the homeowner, then that is provided on there as well. So we're really excited to be able to have this, so people can actually go on and really kind of see where all the Foursquares are and learn more about them. And then if you click on the photo, it'll bring up a full-size image of each home. So it's, again, just kind of a great way to educate the community about the Foursquares and where they're all located in Downers Grove. So our current effort is we're trying to do now a second canvas. So we're out again with the kids dropping off these flyers at all of the doorknobs. We do have one for each of you to look at this evening. But again, it's really, this one is focusing on our new web page and the new interactive map, since that's very exciting. And then again, just asking for them to provide their contact information with us so that we can keep growing the network of Foursquare owners. And so I just want to close by saying that, the purpose of this initiative is to just kind of educate people about the Foursquare, increase people's excitement and appreciation for them. And I think, one of the most gratifying things for us so far has just been all the friends that we've made through doing this, and also the friendships that we've seen being made within the Foursquare owners that network. So thank you for your support, and you can help us by just spreading the word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, great work, and another classic example of educating the community with respect to historic preservation, and this really reflects a great deal of love for the topic, and I think we've checked off educate, advocate, and celebrate several times tonight when it comes to historic preservation, so that's terrific. And most importantly, this is all volunteer work. This is being done by the community for the community, so congratulations. It's really fantastic to see this. It's the kind of thing that we really like to continue to encourage and facilitate in our community. So thank you very much, and thank you for sharing it with us. Any other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience with respect to things not on tonight's agenda? God bless you. Well, very good. Thank you for everyone who shared comments with us. We're going to move item 6, which is the mayor's report. And speaking of little tweaks and changing what we do, the mayor's report, which includes a resolution to appoint members to village boards and commissions, has been moved up. So those of you who are here to be appointed or reappointed, happy day for you. Because normally it's at the end of the meeting. Although I think we usually like to keep it at the end of the meeting, because you then had to stick around and see everything else that we did for the entire evening. But it's moved up in the agenda tonight, so we're already trying something different. So first I would like to ask our village clerk to read the resolution appointing members to village boards and commissions, and I will ask for a motion in a second.
A resolution appointing and reappointing members to village boards and commissions. Whereas Mayor Tully has made the following appointments to village boards and commissions, now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove does hereby confirm the following appointments. Architectural Design Review Board, reappoint Michael Davenport as chair to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Reappoint Jeff Reimer to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Board of Fire and Police Commissioners, reappoint Jean Marino as chair to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Reappoint Thomas Bondi to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Community Events Commission, reappoint Scott Jackaway and Andrea Knudsen to a 3-year terms expiring August 31, 2020. Environmental Concerns Commission, reappoint Daniel Marin to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Appoint Paul Horvarchin to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Fire Pension Board, appoint Angelo Gary to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Library Board, appoint Kim Stapleton to a 6-year term expiring August 31, 2023. Appoint Swapni S. Gigani to an unexpired 4-year term expiring August 31, 2021. Liquor Commission, reappoint Alice Strelo as chair to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Reappoint Don Clary to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Appoint Medina Flanagan to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Stormwater and Floodplain Oversight Committee, reappoint David Gorman as chair to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Reappoint Robert Rule to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Technology Commission, reappoint Mark Rapano as chair to a 4-year term expiring August 31, 2021. Appoint Mark Andrews to a 4-year term expiring August 31, 2021. Transportation and Parking Commission, reappoint Timothy Carter, Anthony Schiller, Jim Wilkinson, and William Roble to 3-year terms expiring August 31, 2020. Zoning Board of Appeals, reappoint Diva Machauskas as chair to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Reappoint Michael McCann to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020. Appoint Mark Meyer and Michael Steffs to a 3-year term expiring August 31, 2020.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution as read by the clerk?
Mr. Chairman, I move that this council adopt the resolution and ratify and confirm the appointments as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Barnett.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor, this won't be a surprise to you after our conversation on Friday, but I'm going to be voting against this resolution tonight, and I want to just make a few statements for the record. Hopefully we will, as you suggested, talk about this down the road. So bear with me for a minute. The process remains our problem. Let me be clear, first of all, the recommended appointees tonight appear fine on paper. I want everybody to understand this is some commentary really directed at my colleagues and our process to date, not any of the individuals that Mayor suggested that we appoint tonight. We've heard repeatedly over the last month process matters. I personally have suggested to my colleagues for in excess of a couple of years now that our process was, in my opinion, flawed. But when it comes to process, I think we are our biggest enemy. We have one process that's written. We have one process that the mayor described a couple weeks ago, which generally has been what we've followed of late. And then over this last week, we engaged in a whole other process that doesn't match either of those. I'd say we have work to do, and that work is to clarify the process to the public, execute on it consistently, and make sure that it's transparent and inclusive. I don't think our process now is that. And I'm going to pick on an example for the moment. Mayor, you'll be familiar with this. But our 2 library appointees tonight appear to have been recommended inconsistently. The first one was recommended just with the existing process the mayor described. A couple of weeks ago, we all got some notice. We were forwarded some information, and we had opportunity and time to talk with that person and talk with each other about what we thought in terms of the appropriateness of the appointee. However, then we decided apparently to skip the process for some reason again. So last week we were I don't know, it wasn't even the same notification process. It wasn't even an email process. I was advised on Thursday I had about 3 hours to give a thumbs up or thumbs down to the current appointee. And, frankly, I would have liked to have had the time and the opportunity to speak with them personally beforehand. I met with Ms. Stapleton a couple weeks ago, and that was helpful. It was insightful and helpful and helped me evaluate. I'm charged up here with confirming or not the appointees. And in order to do that, we have to all be willing to invest the time and the energy to do so. And I think it involves a lot more than a couple of brief conversations via email days before an appointee is put up. So I don't know why the process is so hard for us to stay focused on, but I don't think we focus on it well. I also understand that the applicants that we have, in particular for the library board, have this broad range of time when they've either applied or not applied for this position. And Mayor, you indicated that, we talk with them all on a regular basis, and we talk with them in advance of appointments, and that doesn't seem to always be the case. In fact, some people are appointed moments after they apply. Makes you wonder if they were told to apply. Others are never even contacted. I think in the case of our second applicant tonight, she was first contacted after the Thursday I was told I had to decide already. It doesn't seem quite right. Something isn't square with that process.
Commissioner, I will respond when I can, but your facts are wrong.
Well, you and I spoke Friday, Mayor, and you told me you hadn't spoken to her yet.
I had actually spoken with you years ago with respect to the appointment for another thing. It's not something...
So we can cover ourselves with a lot of, I spoke to him one time, but you, I think, would be not exactly accurate to suggest that you'd spoken with her recently about wanting to serve on the library board. So...
Actually, I have, but go ahead. You're entitled to your own opinions, Commissioner, but not your own facts.
Well, Mayor, let's get the facts out there.
Sure, we'll finish your comments, because actually, most of what you said isn't accurate.
Criteria for selection is inconsistent. Mayor, a couple weeks ago, you suggested that part of the criteria for selection was particular expertise. We have an applicant who actually came to us, expressed interest, who had particular expertise. You told me on Friday you thought that wasn't appropriate in this instance. Again, a conflict versus the supposed process that's out there that you described. So it's my sincere hope that as you've suggested tonight, that we will actually get into this subject, that we will deal with it from this dais, not from a variety of emails back and forth, that we will settle on a process that's transparent, that's inclusive, that the public understands, that's easy to execute, that isn't hard for people to follow where they are in the process. And I hope we'll do that sooner rather than later. But until such time, I'm not going to be able to say yay on any more appointees. Now, you can take your mayoral privilege of speaking last and tell everybody how I'm wrong, but you and I had a conversation on Friday morning, Mayor. You accidentally dialed me at about 8:30. And at that point, you told me you had not spoken to the second applicant in years. That's what you told me. Now, if that wasn't the case, that's fine. That's up to you. But that's what you told me then. So when I suggest that current applicants haven't been spoken to recently about the position that the day before I was told they were going to receive, that's consistent and accurate.
You
It's a
assume that
fact.
I'm the only one having communications, and I didn't ask other people to have those communications, Commissioner.
Mayor, they are your applicants. And when they haven't heard from you,
And I've been asked to
It's a
involve
bit-
the rest of my colleagues, which I did.
Okay.
And you're leaving out a whole lot of information to make a point, which frankly, words are cheap, and I'm going to talk about actions in a minute.
well, I'll go ahead and let you, Mayor, because I think that the facts speak for themselves over the last several years. These appointees have largely been done inconsistently and without a lot of involvement of your colleagues. Now, I think probably like a couple weeks ago, you'll explain to everybody how your colleagues don't do the work for you, and so you had to take the process into your own hands. That's fine. Some of them did. Some of them have, and some of them have tried to, but they have to be given an opportunity to do so. Thursday is a lousy time to say, I'm putting it on an agenda Friday.
Since Thursday and right now, have you made any attempt to contact Ms. Giuliani?
No, I was told Thursday it was not necessary because the votes were there.
But regardless, you have your own individual duty as a representative of this community. Did you even attempt to speak to this person?
As liaison to the library mayor, the moment this is over tonight, I will be trying to meet with all of the board members to get current.
Fair enough. Of the number of people that the village clerk just read the names of, have you reached out or tried to speak to any one of them?
I've not, Mayor, because the process hasn't mattered. The process has not been like that, Mayor. You are going to suggest that each of us should have contacted the 30-some people, and that certainly would be a possibility if we believe for a moment that the process was actually one that was collaborative
The names
with your
have been out there
colleagues.
for, well over a month, maybe 2 months.
About a month and a half.
Single person have you tried to contact and talk to or interview, other than Kim Stapleton?
No, Mayor, because I was under the impression that the others were not actually being debated.
Was there anything stopping you from contacting, sitting down, speaking to any one of the people? Or I'll go back to the 210 people that I've appointed since I've been mayor. How many of them, if I were to ask them, have you ever sat down and
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, you know
Of
it.
those 210, how many?
I don't know, count, Mayor, but when I was liaison to various boards, I contacted those people. Actually, I met with them in most cases. You know that. And in fact, we can certainly dig up FOIA records if you like. You and I had several exchanges about whether people should or should not be appointed based on my conversations with them. Those didn't matter.
And in 6.5 years, how many appointees have you voted against? Exercising your right to do whatever you wish.
I have to check the record, Mayor.
I think one.
No, that's incorrect.
Less than 5.
There have been numerous ones that I have suggested to you I'd like reconsidered, and you informed me that it wasn't necessary.
I'm asking you about your vote, sir. Less than 5.
Okay. Mayor, it's a
You have
very,
a phone, you have
this
an
is,
email,
this
you
is,
have a vote.
we can go all night, and you can prove that because I didn't call your 200 and some appointees, therefore I must not be serious in my concern about the process. I will sit here and tell you that you have.
I'm
the
not
pro-
suggesting you're not serious about the process.
You're entirely
Don't cast
suggesting, you are
aspersions
suggesting,
that
you're,
are not factual.
I'm going to cast more aspersions, Mayor. First of all, you are suggesting, that's absolutely what you're doing. There's no doubt about what you're suggesting. On top of that, the reason, here's another aspersion for you, Mayor. The reason I haven't brought that up I haven't gone into those is because the process has been not one of collaboration. It used to be. In fact, you said you changed that process. And the process was now, here's some names, thumbs up or thumbs down, I've got enough people to do it. That's been the process.
That's absolutely incorrect.
That is absolutely correct.
You know it's incorrect, which is why I'm very
If I knew
disappointed.
it, you can be as disappointed if you want. If I knew it was incorrect, I wouldn't say it, Mayor.
Anything else?
It depends on where you're going to go with this. We'll see.
No, we're not going to have any discussion after. Anything else?
Apparently not, you're the chair.
Not going to say anything else? Floor is yours.
I explained to you what might cause that, Mayor. You said we're not doing that, so you're the chair.
All right, well, we'll get back to the chair then. Other discussion? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking forward to the conversation about how to change the process. I hope it happens sooner than later. We do need to make some improvements. I've spoken with Mayor Tully about some of those improvements, and I look forward to any other ideas that anyone else has. I just want to thank everybody who stepped forward to serve on a board or commission, and I think we're taking a good first step, if not in terms of improving the process, but improving our boards and commissions, increasing diversity, and I think we need to make sure that we keep an eye on that and make it one of our goals for the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallach?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, like Commissioner Jose, I'd like to thank everybody who applied. I know we had a controversy with the library board, and we've had a whole lot of applicants just interested in the library board. That was nice. I don't know if there's that many people that attend library board meetings, which would be nice to see if you apply for something that you know kind of like what's going on. But we went through it, and I do appreciate everybody who did apply, and a number of them actually listed other boards and commissions, which is great to see too. Like the Police Commission, Fire, Planning, Human Services, which is on hold right now, but will be resurrected, I hope, shortly. So for those of you who just applied for the library, please consider other boards and commissions. And more importantly, you're here tonight to see what happens at a council meeting. You can attend the boards and commissions meeting rather than just saying, hey, I'm interested in planning commission. Go to a planning commission meeting, find out what's going on. A number of us up here have run for office thinking that we could do this job. In the past, I kind of laugh when Commissioner Tully, and I don't think since Mayor you said it, but often referred to us as the 7 knuckleheads. when you're out there and you're looking, if you're at a board or commission and you see what's going on and you start attending meetings, you have input into that board or commission. You may decide to move up or move into run for office. So I encourage participation, whether or not they have public comment. You can publicly comment at those commissions. I want to thank the mayor for his work on making the appointments. The process is listed as being rather simple. The mayor appoints, the council approves. Mayor doesn't have to appoint certain people, and the council doesn't have to approve everyone. But that's the simple process, and I've been through 3 mayors. It started with, my experience started with Mayor Krajewski. There was some problems starting out in that area, and if you want to go back in history, you can look. But after that controversy, I think Mayor Krajewski came up with a great process. And it involved getting the commissioners involved. And I thought it was fabulous. But just a few years later, some of the people who complain about the process now were responsible for politically killing that process. And eventually, as a result, Mayor Tully, when people apply, they want to serve, and they don't want to be publicly embarrassed by political voting on the day of the vote. So Mayor Tully took it upon himself. He says, I will do the interviewing, and I will share, and I will ask for opinions. And I appreciate all that he said a few weeks ago about his process. Can we make improvements? Certainly. Do I look forward to improvements? Certainly. But I think Mayor Tully has done an excellent job under the circumstances, and I will support the slate of appointees that he has, and I look forward to always want to look at improving the process. So, thank you all. Thank you, Mayor Tully.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Roll?
Yes, Mayor. I've spent 10 years sitting in the back and volunteering for boards and commissions and sitting on boards and commissions and going to boards and commission meetings. And I've seen this process restructured a number of times. And one of the reasons it was restructured so that all of the appointments came up at the same time and everyone was reappointed en masse was because we had a number of occasions where one person was singled out and embarrassed. And I am mortified for our appointees to the library to have to be what seems to be dragged through the mud and embarrassed in public when they're just volunteering their services at no charge, no pay to them. I want to thank every volunteer we have because we can't do what we do up here without your good input and without your thoughts. And it takes a lot to volunteer for a board or commission. It takes a lot of time out of your life. It takes time away from your family. And I want to thank everyone for applying and trying to make this town better, just for the sake of making the town better and not for some personal gratification. But I just don't see any reason to be dragging one person or another through the mud in public and arguing about them for their own personal gain or personal political gain. And I apologize. So thank you for applying and thank you for working with us.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace.
I just briefly would like to echo the sentiments of some of my fellow commissioners up here. We have so many passionate people in our town who just want to be involved and just want to help. And I just want to congratulate all of those who are nominated tonight, and also say that can we streamline our process for appointing? I think so, and I think a couple of us up here have some ideas as to how to do that. We should always be looking to improve, and I think that there's a lot of us up here willing to do so and make the process better for all of those people out there that really want to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Don't feel compelled.
Let's say,
Commissioner White.
keep this under a minute. I fully support everybody who's nominated this evening. I'm going to vote for them. I'm also very impressed by the really tremendous number of applicants for these positions. And I really look forward to not only discussing this process, but harnessing that energy of all these people. You know, there's 7 people on various boards and commissions, and if 65 people apply for 7 positions, we got to find other things that these other motivated, passionate, interesting people can do. So I'm looking forward not only to talking about our process for this, but finding other ways to harness all that energy. But I will be voting yes this evening and look forward to future discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the conversation. Sometimes you get to see how the sausage is being made, and that's what you're seeing. But I've heard a lot of people talk about transparency, so congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. You're seeing transparency in action right here on live television. What I take issue with is the suggestion that there's something secretive, sneaky, or sinister about the appointment process. Nothing could be further from the truth. And to suggest otherwise is just disingenuous, and I'll stop there. It is a very simple process. There are 7 people up here. Yes, I get to make a recommendation, but I have 1 vote. I can't put anybody into any board or commission seat by myself. Can't do it. There needs to be at least 3 other people, and I can't remember the last time, I think it was August of 2015, when we had a split vote on any board or commission appointment. So by definition, this has to be a collaborative process because I can't appoint anybody by myself. And why would I appoint somebody if my colleagues all tell me I'm not supporting that person? And yes, Commissioner Earle's absolutely right. Why would we do that in public? If I'm told by my colleagues, gee, I really don't like who you're putting forward, almost without exception, that person is never put on an agenda in the first place. So by definition, this is a collaborative process. I have to have the consent of my fellow commissioners in order to get anybody to a seat. And for about 200 and some times, it's been a unanimous vote, without question. I don't do that. This council does that, and the prior council and the council before that. And the other thing I want to point out is that, yes, I understand there was a written policy that was adopted in 2009 before I was mayor. And if you actually cut through the many pages of single-spaced wordage, this process isn't a whole lot different than what we're actually doing. But there are some realities in life. But the one thing I think is just missing from this conversation is that since I've been mayor, after every election, and we have one every 2 years, the council makeup changes slightly. We have something called a governance meeting. And what that is designed to do is after the election, when the new council is seated, we all sit down and we talk about how are we going to conduct ourselves as a council until the next election when there may be new people. And how are we going to handle things like the appointment of board and commission members? And you know what? We have a public meeting, and we sit over in the committee room, and we all talk about it, and I explain to everybody on television with whoever's in the room, and frankly, we don't usually have that many people in the room, but with all my colleagues, exactly what I plan to do. And we achieve consensus. Or maybe somebody doesn't like it, but the majority achieves consensus. That's what happens. We have 7 people here, we're not all going to agree, but the majority ends up deciding the issue. Again, a very simple concept in American government. The majority votes, and that's what happens. So in 2011, we had a governance meeting, and I went through the process, and we had that consensus. In 2013, we had a governance meeting and went through that process and had consensus. In 2015, we went through that process and had consensus. On January 24th of this year, we had a governance meeting, and on television, over in a committee room, we went through this whole appointment process. Open to the public. Every single person on this dais was there, I think. I didn't check the minutes, and maybe somebody was missing. So this isn't some sinister, sneaky, secret process. It is pretty simple. A lot of people apply. I do my best to pick people that I think would fit the particular role, whether it's parking and traffic, or stormwater, or fire pension board, or library, or Stormwater Floodplain Oversight Commission, or it's the Zoning Board of Appeals, or it's the Plan Commission, and you try to achieve a mix, you try to have some diversity and perspectives in the community, you do the best you can. And you know what, that takes time and effort. Sometimes I can do it myself, sometimes I need help. And over the years, yes, I've occasionally called on my colleagues to help. The library board was a classic example where I asked my colleagues, can you guys find somebody you can all achieve consensus around? and bring it forward. So maybe I wasn't having conversations with everybody, but my colleagues were. Guess what? The very same colleagues that have to vote on it, the very same people that I collaborate with, because I can't do this myself. Can't. I need the help of my colleagues. And you know what? Occasionally they will recommend people to me. Commissioner Jose has done it. Other commissioners have recommended people to me. Mr. Barnett has done that over the years. And there have been various levels of involvement by council members. What you have to keep in mind, folks, is almost without exception, the village council, and I don't mean this one, I mean this one and prior ones going back to 2011, typically will get 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks advance notice of who the board and commission members are. They're free to do whatever they wish in terms of due diligence. And individually, they do different things at different times, probably not consistently. Great deal of inconsistency there, I think. Some will probably never contact anybody. Some will trust my judgment. Some may sit down and interview them at length. I don't think there's any consistently, and we don't have a process that says that Commissioner X has to spend 6.5 hours interviewing a certain candidate and everyone has to do the same thing. It doesn't work that way. So to suggest that there's some kind of formulaic way to go about this is silly. We do the best we can. People are entitled to their opinions, but there's nothing secret, sneaky, or sinister about it. I have to get the collaboration of my colleagues to do anything. Almost always we do. I think there's a big spotlight on the process right now because it is what it is. And can we make some changes so that people better understand it, as was suggested by Mr. Pollack? Sure we can. Can we put the names out earlier? Sure we can. Are the people who are being appointed tonight, have half of them left out of terror of what they're going to be facing as volunteers at a board and commission? Probably. We don't want to turn this into some kind of a Spanish Inquisition for people who, as was said by Commissioner Roll, just want to volunteer to do good for their committee. Goodness gracious. That being said, if folks want to know more about how it works, great. But there is a timing element, which is what was hinted at as to, well, why do I take on some of this myself? Because quite frankly, people are busy, and over the years, my colleagues haven't had the time to do the interviewing, and they certainly haven't been consistent about it, about making recommendations to me. And yet we have a whole bunch of people that have to get appointed because their terms expire, and then we have issues where we don't have quorums. That can be a real problem on some of the land use boards. And it's unfair to people who have been told, yes, you're going to be up for appointment, and they sit and wait for months. Like some of you in the audience tonight, your appointment's been postponed at least a month, if not more, because of the focus. And for that, I apologize. Terms generally expire at the end of August, unless people leave earlier, which is why we try to get these done in August. We're now sitting in October. So it's already been delayed, and that can have an impact upon the ability of the boards to function in their highest and best way. So yes, sometimes I will just take action because it's my responsibility to make sure that people get appointed to boards and commissions. But once again, I can't do anything without the collaboration of my colleagues. And they have every ability to ask for whatever information they want, talk to whomever they wish, recommend whatever they want. It's a collaborative process. So just again, there is nothing sneaky, secret, or sinister about it. Never has been. And that's what I take issue with. So my final thought is to all those volunteers and either reappointed individuals or folks who are being appointed for the first time, thank you for not leaving. Thank you for staying and continuing to participate, because we rely heavily on our board and commission members, all of them, to make recommendations in particular areas of expertise to this council and to the community that we then benefit from. And whether it's community events, or the Technology Commission, or the Human Services Commission, which one day will be revitalized. I know Commissioner Waldeck's working on that. And again, Commissioner Waldeck is leading that charge. Nothing sneaky or sinister about it. Oh, yes, we have we have a plan commission spot that needs to be filled. One of the plan commission members chose not to be reappointed, and we thank her for her service. And I've asked the two former members of the Plan Commission that sit in this council today, Commissioner Earl and Commissioner Jose, I think they might know a thing or two about who might make a good Plan Commissioner, to work together and make a recommendation to me. Commissioner Barnett, you're free to talk to them anytime you wish.
Need more than 4 hours notice.
I'm giving you as long as they have. Yeah, and sometimes things are not perfect, but it's not sneaky, it's not sinister, and I guarantee you that no one has been consistent in their participation in this board appointment process. I guarantee it. It's not that formulaic. It's not a metric system. you do the best you can and try to involve as many people as you can in the best way you can. And that's about as deep as it gets. And I would say that with 210 appointments over 6.5 years, I think we've done a pretty darn good job with rare exceptions, and we're very blessed to have such wonderful volunteers serving this community in many different ways. So some of the people, and now you're all afraid to stand up, so I won't ask you. But for those who are being reappointed, we thank you for re-upping. And I see we have some folks in the audience, like Ms. Strelov. Thank you again for your service in the Liquor Commission and reserving. I think Jim Wilkerson is here tonight, who's being reappointed. And we have some new appointees, Ms. Jagani and Mr. Steffes, and I think Mr. Gary is here tonight as well. It's not, thank you. It's not obligatory to be here, but I always like to recognize those who have stepped up and are willing to volunteer and serve the community. Thank you very much. We look forward to it. And I will warn you in advance that while we may not always agree with what you recommend, because ultimately we're the policymakers who are directly accountable to the voters and have to make the decisions, even if we do disagree with you or do something different than what you recommend, we always deeply appreciate and value the work that you do in making the recommendations that you do, because we couldn't do our jobs as well as we do without your assistance. So with that, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Nay.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Thank you. That brings us to item 7, which is and the resolution passes 6-1. Thank you. That brings, and congratulations and thank you for your service. All right, that brings us to item 7, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from members of the audience on any items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8, which is our active agenda. We have 2 items on tonight's active agenda. We'll begin with item 8A as an apple. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending provisions for landmark designation filing?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adopt a motion, an ordinance, amending provisions for landmark designation filing as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution granting historic landmark designation for 4714 Oakwood Avenue?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adopt a resolution granting historic landmark designation for 4714 Oakwood Avenue as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience on this item? Questions or comments from members of the village council? I'm just going to say 2 things. Number 1, thank you very much to the homeowners, John and Ruth Wander, for volunteering to landmark your homes. I'm going to come down in a moment and invite you up for the certificate and ask if you want to say a few words, or if you're on your way now, you're happy to do it now. This is another terrific example of preserving the balance between tradition and progress in our community, and it's only made possible by the community organizations like Friends of the Edwards House, the Historical Society, but most importantly, the homeowners themselves. So thank you. I'm going to come down if I'd like to invite you up. Well, let's vote on it first. Let's do that. Let's vote on it first. 1 second. We'll do the formality first. Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Have been landmarked. I'd like to present you with the historic landmark certificate for the Prince Home. We scared off our photographer. You got grassroots photography. Congratulations. Here, this is for you. Congratulations. Put you in the middle. Yes, that's what I said. A rose between 2 thorns. All right, good. Thank you very much. If you'd like to share a few words about the home, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
A few words.
Keep it under 30 minutes.
The boss says I should just say a few words. Ruth and I would like to thank especially Cindy Jeske. She came to our home. She did more than walk us through the process of this procedure. She just made it so easy for us that all we had to do was say, yes, Cindy, yes, Cindy, okay, Cindy. We agree with you, and we would like to see our home remain a home in the village of Downers Grove. My family came here in 1890. My grandfather, Valentine Wander, bought 2 lots on Prince Street from Earl Prince. We've had members of our family on the fire department, teaching, police department, in many different facets of Downers Grove. I grew up here, as did all of my children, all of our children. And it's nice to see the community trying to keep Downers Grove looking like Downers Grove did when my grandfather was here, when my father and mother were here, and the Downers Grove that I knew. It's nice to see all of you and all of you trying to keep Downers Grove from not having the look of Plainfield and having the look of Downers Grove for decades to come. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you and congratulations on joining the growing list of landmark properties in our community, something to be very proud of. That brings us to the end of our active agenda. It brings us to our first reading or our workshop agenda. This is the segment of the meeting that's a little less formal. This is where items are presented for discussion, consideration only. No final action will be taken at this time. Traditionally, we ask our fine village staff, led by the head guy, Dave Fieldman, village manager, to introduce the items for discussion, and then we flip it around a little bit. Typically, we'll ask the village council for input first, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for any questions or comments they may have. And I believe we have one item on tonight's first reading or workshop agenda. So, Mr. Fieldman, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. You are correct. Just one item tonight. It is another periodic review of the food truck ordinance. This discussion is prompted by a request from one of our fine businesses in the village, Alter Brewing. Also, Commissioner Jose and Mayor Tully had requested further discussion and review of this ordinance. Since adopting the food truck ordinance in July of 2016, one food truck license has been issued. Ongoing discussion points include our requirements for background checks as part of the licensing and the cost of the license itself. With that, Mayor, we're happy to answer any questions you may have. There's additional information in the staff report, and we can simply just hand it over back to you and the council.
Great. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the summary of the information, because obviously we have the written submission from Alter Brewing with respect to their experience under the ordinance for the past year, and thank you for that assemblage of information. It was very helpful. And then we also have further information from staff. And basically, my perspective here is that I'm very glad we have a food truck ordinance. I mean, this is something that clearly is not a fad, but it's a growing trend, and there's a high demand for it, and it can have many benefits to a growing and vibrant community like ours. And also as a potential entrepreneurial aspect to it, that someone can start a business in a food truck, and if it works out, then they develop a following, and that can lead to a brick and mortar restaurant, which clearly we're always trying to attract those to our community. But understand that there are some issues about where they can be, and obviously you're dealing with a mobile unit as opposed to one that is stationary. But I'm glad we're looking at this again, because I think when we first adopted the ordinance, we said that we would check in periodically and see how it was working, and if there were adjustments that could be made. I'm disappointed with the paucity of licenses because, on the one hand, it's a paucity of licenses. Number two, it doesn't really give us a rich data set from which to draw upon, and that's unfortunate. And I would be in favor of reducing some of our restrictions so we can actually get more experience with it and then see what kind of an impact it actually has in terms of impact on our staff and whether fees need to be adjusted down the road. But it's right now apparently not much of an impact because there aren't many licenses in the first place. I know there's been some concerns about the reluctance for people to even apply, and yet I think we all have seen how the food truck model in conjunction with other businesses and other communities has worked very successfully to create destinations that attract commerce, and particularly with our current and future revenue structure that could be advantageous. And it may start out small, but most things that are good do start out small. I would like to seriously consider making whatever changes we need to be more competitive and frankly attract more activity so we can truly gauge its impact and its benefits on the community, which I don't think we're getting right now, and I think that's a shame. But I'm not saying much more than I said, I think, back when we first adopted the ordinance, except now we have a year's experience. So with that, I'll stop talking and see what my colleagues think. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you that we should look at making some changes. The first one that comes to mind is that folks have complained about not just the cost of the license, which I'm perfectly fine reducing the fee if that will generate additional business here in the village. But I think we have to look at modifying the background check requirement. As you know, I've been a proponent of it, and I think we still need to maintain it with regard to any food truck that would be licensed to operate within a park or near a school. Now, I know our regulations require a certain distance, and I do appreciate that. But I think we have to maintain that protection for public safety, but I think we can limit it to those areas where you're more likely, I think much more likely, to end up with children patronizing the food truck. In terms of whether it's an office park or the industrial area, Ellsworth, I have much less concern there, and I don't know if the solution is two separate classes of license. I would leave that to staff's expertise. But I think we can make these changes and not only encourage more business here in the village through food trucks, but also accomplish the public safety goals that the background check requirement is angling toward.
Thanks, Commissioner. I appreciate your flexibility on that. I think I've said before, I'm actually an advocate of not having the background check requirement for two reasons. Number one, if a food truck is located on Park District property or on school property, I'm not sure what instance that would be, I would defer to the judgment of the school district authorities and the Park District authorities, who are obviously extremely concerned about the welfare of children, and if they think that that's appropriate because they're the ones contracting with the truck to be on their property, I don't think we should disallow that, but I would put my faith and confidence in their ability to gauge whether or not they needed that. I would suspect that they would exercise that in the same manner that they attend to everything involved in the welfare of children. If we're talking about something that is proximate, then fine, I have no problem with that. But the other reason why I'm not as concerned about it is I realize there's been concern about background checks with the idea of, or the assumption that they're constantly roving through neighborhoods. And the reality is the types of food trucks that we're talking about that are selling $16 tacos, gourmet tacos, are not driving through neighborhoods. They are parked stationary for hours, usually in conjunction with some restaurant or event or another business in town. And they're much more like a stationary restaurant where it's the risk of somebody being whisked away in the back of a gourmet empanada truck is highly unlikely. And so I think we can draw some distinctions, and you may have hit upon it with two different classes or something like that. So we're talking about ones that they're going to say you need to be in a certain spot for a certain number of time. That's going to eliminate a lot, I think, of the concerns that people have voiced.
With regard to the second concern, I don't think you're going to see too many of these trucks floating around neighborhoods. I agree, and I think there are other concerns about other trucks that drive around neighborhoods, but that's a different story.
And I agree it's a different story, and I have a different view on it.
Right. But with regard to the other units of government, I certainly hope that they would do that, but hope isn't a strategy. We are by allowing it and requiring a license fee, putting our imprimatur upon the operation of this business. And I think they ought to meet certain requirements as a result. And if that means that we're working in conjunction with or dropping a requirement on somebody that's going to operate in or around a school, in or around a park, I'm just fine with that.
Thanks. Other thoughts, comments from members of the council? Commissioner Volak.
Thank you, Mayor. Somebody ought to kick it off here. What I will support, I will support fees that match taxpayer costs. And I have asked many times what the cost is for processing a license, at least initially. The answer was $250. And that's our cost. Now, anything we charge less than that is taxpayer money. Taxpayers subsidizing a business. So I will support something that covers all the taxpayer costs. I can see maybe, if staff will look into it, maybe a reduction in renewals, since most of the data is already entered into whatever system is being used. So maybe the renewal will cost less than $250. I'll support that. We can get the cost down to $25. I'd support that. But it's got to cover taxpayer costs, our cost. I will support an annual license that runs 12 months, not necessarily based on a calendar year. We're not going to be inundated with food trucks to make this very complicated where everything has to be done in January and finished in December. So when you purchase a license, it's good for 12 months. Background checks, all I'm looking for is something to protect kids. Reasonable checks that may not require fingerprinting for those on the trucks, and not necessarily the office owners. I can't see. I mean, even if the owner is an ex-felon and they're working in the office, that's fine. It's who's on the truck and who might be dealing with kids or having kids in the vicinity. Current state law forbids asking an applicant about past arrests or convictions, which means that the owner goes through the process. So if somebody comes in for a job, he can't ask, have you been arrested or have you been convicted? That's currently against state law, at least. So then they would go through a background check, fingerprinting and all that, and then maybe find out at that point whether there's a problem. I think that's, it turns out, I agree, it's a bit of a burden on the owner-operator. So I would not ask for the background checks on the owners and just people who work on the trucks. Now, there are different types of background checks. I think we got a taste of that on the questions and answers. I would support, I forget what they called it, a court search or whatever, rather than fingerprinting, and that's a whole lot cheaper. I can support something like that. I'd still like to see something to make sure that we're protecting the kids. What I will not support, I will not support a designer ordinance for food trucks that are geared to helping a particular business. And we keep hearing from one business, I'm not getting all kinds of inquiries from a lot of other businesses saying, why can't we have food trucks? It seems to be one in particular, and I don't want to do anything that's going to design an ordinance geared for a particular company. I don't know what other businesses will benefit. They say other businesses will benefit. Well, it's brick and mortar that can be hurt. Maybe they start a food truck business and maybe they'll start up a brick and mortar someday. But right now, a particular business can go out and get catering. They can order from anywhere. There was something called the food taxi. I understand Uber's delivering. There's a lot of options out there, and I don't think we need to design a food truck ordinance to help a particular business or maybe a couple of businesses. So that's pretty much what I'll support, what I won't support. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Commissioner. The thoughts of the council? Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. I think we should loosen this thing way up. I don't think we should we should be of the mindset that we only act when enough people ask us to act. I think that's reacting, not acting. And I'd like us to be more deliberate. I think that there's an opportunity to increase vibrancy in our community. I think there's an opportunity to create an environment that allows people to start businesses. I think the risks are exceedingly low. When I look at the neighboring communities around us and those that do or do not require background checks, they largely do not. The Park District not doing it when they run the events that they hire food trucks for, I think speaks volumes about the expectations of our community. I don't know that everybody expects us to guarantee the background of anyone that works in our community. We certainly aren't doing that on a whole lot of other fronts. I think Bill's comments about covering cost is good. We generally do that with our permit and fee structure. That's kind of the way we mostly operate. It becomes, an obligation on us to work real hard to keep those costs down because we don't want to put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage. But the general premise that we're going to cover our costs makes a lot of sense. But I have no interest in background checks or any other fingerprinting or any other really restrictions on the operation, frankly. I think we ought to let this take off and see what happens.
Thank you, Commissioner. I agree. Commissioner White.
If we were to say hypothetically remove all background checks, would there be any reason to continue to license them?
Just to be able to contact them and make sure that they're operating according to the other regulations.
Because I guess where I'm coming from now is that as long as they're restricted to certain industrial or commercial areas, and they can't open in the commercial district, they couldn't park on, in the parking lot on Ogden Avenue. They can't park in Main Street. So if it's restricted to the industrial parks, and if it's on school or park district property with those entities taking responsibility, I guess where it comes down to is I don't see the upside as glorious and wonderful as the advocates of food trucks say. I also don't see the downside as being horrific as the opponents say. That's really not. It's a much narrow. I have a hard time getting all excited either way about it, quite frankly, is really what it comes down to.
You've never had a $16 gourmet taco.
I probably won't. I'll find other places to buy $16 meals. So, but that said, I mean, having food trucks parked in the Esplanade doesn't particularly bother me. What concerns me about, I think the cost to the village of figuring out what the cost is to the village will be more than we'll ever collect. That measuring the cost will cost more than any possible fee we could charge. So I'm never comfortable that we'll collect our costs because we'll pay more to figure out what it is we were paying than we would pay in collecting in the fee. If we get 10 food trucks, we're looking at $2,500 in fees. I mean, that's not worth our time. We don't license other businesses as far as I know. But absolutely, I would not want food trucks operating anywhere other than places like Ellsworth Park or the Esplanade or the other business parks. I don't want them anywhere near where there are established brick and mortar restaurants. It's not fair to our brick and mortar restaurants to have to compete. But if they're an industrial park, that would be a different story. So I'm not really fully sure where I'm going with this, except I don't know if I like the idea of background checks, but to say it's protecting our kids, I don't know how effective they are in the real world. And the money is trivial.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good thing it's a workshop. Commissioner Burnett.
Thanks. I think we do an awful lot of, I mean, there's certainly a lot of people we don't license, but we do a lot of licensing, whether they're, liquor license is certainly the one that comes to mind with my time there. So I think we probably the odds are pretty good. Our staff would pretty promptly be able to determine what they think the costs associated with licensing are. But I think there is a value to licensing. The one thing that we can do by doing that is essentially ensure compliance with the county, who's really, in fact, actually checking things like health department standards and the methods of which operation and food handling. Those things are happening. So if you were to suggest that the purpose of the licensing was to ensure that those operating in our community lawfully were in compliance with the county, who's already investing a fair amount of time and energy in monitoring and testing and checking, I think there's a value to our residents from doing that, from going through that exercise. But it's pretty small at that point. It becomes a pretty small and easy cost to cover, and I don't have any problem either with frankly the locations. I mean, this isn't. I don't know. I'm highly skeptical that there's a big threat to brick and mortar businesses.
Thank you. Other comments? I can open up to the audience and then come back. It looks like a yes. All right. Any questions or comments from members of the audience on this topic? Please. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Pete Kasanovich. I'm one of the founders of Alter Brewing Company. I also am a chairperson of the Transportation and Safety Committee in Western Springs, so I appreciate all that you do and everybody that was appointed tonight. One of the things that I think is we're not asking for any one specific business to be benefited. However, we would reap benefits of allowing people to come in and hang out in the brewery for a little bit longer. I think that the 1% tax for food and beverage that was voted, I think, maybe in July, I think that tax will also help benefit the village and the beer that we're selling. I think as a company, we're not just trying to embrace selling beer. We went and interviewed multiple villages and looked at multiple spots and multiple locations. We originally chose to be in, our final decision was to be in Downers Grove. When we were speaking with the Liquor Commission, we made it abundantly clear of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to be a part of the community. And I think if you take a look at what we've done over the past 2 years, besides just being a business in the community, we're trying to be part of the community. That with the Lyman Woods, the fact that we helped fund the honey project there, I think the fact that we continue to support each and every event that the village holds shows that we're not just here for a one-time opportunity. We don't want to get involved in the food business. I think smart business people know what they're good at. And I think making beer, we do a hell of a job at it. I am more than happy to take any questions. I think one other thing is that the food truck industry has grown considerably in the U.S. over the past 10 years. I think every town in America has some sort of food truck. I agree with protecting children. That's one of the reasons I'm on the Traffic and Safety Committee, or Transportation and Safety Committee in Western Springs. So it doesn't, I appreciate that fact. What I don't want to do is inundate a small business, not ours, but the food trucks, with costs. And I'll add one more item, is that we have had considerable pushback, and to the point where people wouldn't even take the opportunity to apply. I think if you can come up with a constructive way to change the structure and we get some food trucks to apply, again, let's revisit it in 6 months to a year. And as you can see, we're always looking to work together with the village to try to come up with the best solution, best case solution. And if for some reason it doesn't work, then we go back to the drawing board and try to start over. But I appreciate all your time, effort, and energy.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Commissioner Waldeck has a question.
I do. First off, I want to thank you for the letter and the information. And we were talking about the lack of the number of food trucks that have applied. And I think the general public should know that there's some type of a food truck strike going on against Downers Grove that was listed. It's not, they don't like the $250 fee, they don't like this, they don't like that, and so they decided to band together and go on strike. So that's why we haven't had a inundation. Sooner or later, that's going to crack. Somebody's going to want to make money, and they'll apply, and then it'll start. The question I have is, the complaint that you had about the fee, and I want to recover our cost. I don't know what you charge for a Lyman Honey Wheat Ale, a 12-ounce pour, but if I told you to charge $1, you'd probably tell me, well, no, I'd lose money. And I don't know what you do charge for a 12-ounce pour anyway for that.
You should come in and find out.
I might. But I wouldn't ask you to charge $1 for it because you're not making a profit. And we're not in the business of making a profit. We're a service, and anything that we undercut is taxpayer funding. So, like I say, I appreciate the letter and the information and the, as I said, the background check. I'm still want to see something, but I don't know what's your sense if we didn't go with the full fingerprint and went through what some of the other communities are doing as far as background.
Well, I think there's probably a number of businesses where people come into your community that you don't have background checks on. And I think when discussing the $250 and talk about it multiplied by 10 because that's the amount of food trucks we're discussing, it's $2,500. I do appreciate the fact that you said maybe the renewal would be less than the $250 because essentially all the paperwork is in there. Again, the costs that we put into building out that facility is a lot more than $250 and a lot more than $1. And I think that covering your costs and then some is a great business model. I think the fingerprinting becomes onerous on the business because once the feeling from the food truck guys, and I don't think it's necessarily a strike, I think it's more of a, if we say yes to this in Downers Grove, what does that mean to Naperville? What does that mean to Lamont? What does that mean to each and every village that these guys go in? I think that if we can start somewhere, that would be very helpful. I think if we could, if the cost is $250, then I guess it's $250. I can't argue with you on that one. With regards to fingerprinting, I think you would actually, and I'm going to argue with myself here, it's the people on the food trucks are going to come and go just because, just like any job that is not a high-paying job, there's a lot of movement, just like at McDonald's. Back in the day when I worked at Burger King, other people worked at McDonald's, you were working for $2.50 to $3 an hour. Now we want to pay those people $15. This is a whole other discussion for another day, but you just certainly can't pay people for things you can't afford them for. So my point is, going back to the fingerprinting, that's where you're going to get the people on the food trucks assisting probably the owner might change out. So having to constantly re-up and fingerprint them may be monotonous. But again, you have to cover your costs, I understand that. And if $250 is the cost, then I guess that's what it is. But I would like to have a recount on that.
I certainly invite staff to see if they can cut it down. Like I said, if it was $25, I'd go with that too, just a matter of recovering costs.
I'll go with $25.
As far, other communities do this court search, and so if it's acceptable in those communities, it's something, I think it's something I can live with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Earl, question for Mr. Kucinich?
Yes, I do. You've had much more contact with food trucks and their owners, and you're here telling us that the owners are very often on the truck. Is that the case most of the time? Then it would be better to. I'm just hypothesizing that maybe it is better to check the owner as opposed to the people they're working with, because they're not leaving their food truck with just anybody. They're actually on the truck. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, my personal opinion is that the fingerprinting is onerous. However, the answer I'll give you is that many times the owner of the food truck is on the food truck. I mean, this isn't, it's not a business where people own multiple food trucks. What they do is they own one. Many times it's a life-changing career or it's a dream fulfilled, where they go out and they're making, whether it be pizza, $16 tacos, burgers, grilled cheese is really hot. So I think that many times it's the individual, and depending on how busy they get, there may be two other individuals on the truck as well. We have a lady that owns a hot dog truck, and she works the hot dog truck by herself. There's some other food trucks that are growing in capacity and bringing new food trucks in where it can fit a few more people. But again, I don't think it's considered a full-time job for many, especially as the second or third employee on the truck.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Wallace?
I don't have a question, but just rather a statement. I appreciate you coming out tonight and sharing your thoughts. I'd also like to thank staff for the answers to some of these questions regarding background checks. This is not the first time this has come before us, as you know, and I had hang-ups with the process before. I'm still working through those. I'm interested in maybe potential operation restrictions, adding something that has them remaining stationary for a certain amount of time. Not quite sure where I'm at with the background checks, but it was interesting what staff provided from other municipalities regarding how they background check and if they do at all. I have young children, obviously. That is a concern of mine, as a couple of my colleagues. It's a concern of theirs as well. But I'm hoping we can come to some type of compromise, because this has come before us again and again, and I'd like to have it somewhat settled.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for consideration.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions at this point? Thank you very much, Mr. Kucinich.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from members of the audience?
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Council.
Welcome.
Christine Frigo, 1918 Elmore Avenue. Just a question, and I know it came up years ago, and I don't remember the answer. What about the ice cream trucks that come into town? I know we don't license them, but do we do background checks on these ice cream trucks that drive around our neighborhoods and we see all summer and up to maybe last week? Is that something we've looked at before, should look at, or in conjunction with this consider?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
We have looked at it before, we should look at it again, and I think what we've been trying to do is draw a distinction between trucks that happen to sell food that drive through the neighborhoods all the time, and frankly, I think fairly stated, are targeted towards children, given what they're selling, as opposed to, and I'm exaggerating when I say $16 gourmet taco is probably $9. But it's a very different situation where it is usually it's a more upscale product, and it's usually parked somewhere in conjunction with an event or a particular business, or it's in an office park. And it's usually there for a period of time, and then it moves to another place for a period of time. And it's not circling the neighborhood, sort of.
Oh, I'm totally aware.
So the short answer is, it has come up before. We should look at it again, but we've tried to. I think fairly stated they're similar but different in very important ways.
I have a husband that runs out to the ice cream truck, and I had college-age daughters, so
who hasn't chased
good
that truck
experiences in food trucks in Illinois and in Indiana. So I was just kind of curious, and I recognize them being very different, but at the same time, again, maybe something as you're exploring this to take a look at again for next summer or whenever they return to the community. So thanks.
Thanks for the question. Other questions or comments from members of the audience on this topic? Good evening, welcome.
Evening, Jim Wilkinson, 1125 Black Oak. Concerning this whole thing with the food trucks, right now, if I wanted to have a private party with a food truck as my caterer, is that allowed in the town?
Yes, and we would take care of it as part of a special events. I got a yes and a no.
It's a yes. You can have it on a private party as long as it's not open to the public.
Okay, gotcha.
So there's no permitting or licensing as we're discussing
Not as a
here.
private party.
As a private party, all right.
And I imagine that some other events could do it as part of a special event license.
Yes,
if
that
it
is
was open to the public. Okay, so we're both.
So like Altered Brewing, if he had a special event,
Yeah,
he
you'd
could...
have to have
he could bring
special
the
event
trucks.
license after one, and I think we have limits on how many you can have. Right.
Okay, so it's possible. Also wondering if you have explored or at least gotten some background information as to the experiences that the Morton Arboretum is having. They have several events, and they've seemed to have added more every year, where they're bringing in the food trucks. And if we could draw upon their experiences and information to help us with this process.
Good question.
If you guys have done that or not, but I know they've had several, at least 2 this year, and they're talking about multiple food trucks that come in for the event. So offer that as a possibility.
Good suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments from members of the audience? I know everyone's hungry now. We're talking about food trucks for 30 minutes.
Everyone get here.
Better hurry up. Other questions or comments from members of the council? All right, well, as mentioned, this is a workshop. We're not making any final decisions at this time, but we had said we were going to revisit this, and we did, and I think we had a good conversation. So we'll see where everyone is at, and we didn't set any particular timeline on this, but
we'll do some research.
Sounds like there might be some changes forthcoming.
And we'll check in with the council individually, and then we'll put it on an upcoming agenda to be determined. And that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. It brings us to item 10, which is reserved for council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to either share with those present or watching from home items of interest or their goings-on in the community, or to report out in their roles as liaisons to either boards or other government entities. I'll start to my left tonight with Commissioner Barnett. Commissioner Barnett.
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Earl.
No report, Mayor.
Over to Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind everybody that Wednesday, October the 11th, not this coming Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, is coming up the Night at the Firehouse from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Station 5, which is at 6701 Main Street. There's an opportunity there to meet a lot of the folks in our fire department, see some great displays, whether it's the side-by-side burn demonstrations with a room that's sprinklered and a room that's not. They usually get the hydraulic cutters out and take apart a car. A lot of other opportunities, just kids to slide down poles and things like that. So it's a great opportunity to get a little bit of insight into the fire service, get some snacks, get some great information about fire safety, and make sure that folks are as safe as can be here in Downers. So again, that's Wednesday the 11th, 6:30 to 8:30 at Station 5. Thanks very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. There are oodles of things happening in our downtown, and while there, usually we go with the art fairs and the major events, but if you go on www.downtowndg.org, you'll find lots of things there that I just wouldn't have enough time to list. There are classes going on during the day. If you want to take up knitting, which is way beyond me. But anyway, there's a lot of classes going on, a lot of little events that might be of interest. So I suggest you go on the website. Also, October is it's fall. We're getting closer and closer to the window painting for the Halloween, and some, if you want to set up your calendar for November, there's things like the Bonfield Express and other events that you might want to check out. So please check the website, and there's a lot there. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. Fire Prevention Week is October 8th through the 14th, and we are having the 23rd Annual Silent Parade on Maple Avenue Friday, October 13th. It begins in Hinsdale at 7 o'clock p.m., and if you are in Downers Grove, you can assemble along Maple Avenue to view the parade and pay tribute. You can hold a flashlight, and that will happen at approximately 7:15 p.m., and the parade route ends at Trinity Lutheran Church in Lisle at approximately 7:45 p.m., where the public and firefighters can gather for refreshments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much for reminding everyone of that. Commissioner White.
No report.
And I have one quick item to add, as I occasionally do, is updating my colleagues and the rest of the community about what's going on with the floodplain mapping update. As folks know, I serve as the District 3 municipal representative to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee. And I know a lot of residents are interested in what's going on with the changes to the floodplain maps that ultimately will be adopted by FEMA. And the short answer is I don't have a date for you yet, other than that the open house on July 27th was very successful. Over half of the DuPage County communities either were in attendance or were represented at the open house and provided comments on that. The final attendance numbers are still being determined. But the comment period is now closed as of August 25th of 2017. There were a total of 127 comments received by the Illinois State Water Survey. And they are currently reviewing those comments, assigning them to either their staff or to DuPage County to determine action needed for comment resolution. That's all in process. And then there's a appeal period, which I don't know when that's going to start. I don't know when that's going to end, but as soon as I do, I will let you know. But for those who have been following this process, that's the latest development. So that's stormwater. I have nothing further in terms of a report. We cannot adjourn tonight because it is October, and that means it's not only playoff season for baseball, but it's also budget season. And tonight we are going to convene into the committee room to begin the conversation of the fiscal year 2018 budget. There will be a series of meetings where we will be discussing this topic. Tonight's the first time that staff will be introducing it publicly. Members of the council have received a sneak preview, and it's available on the website. But we're going to start that conversation tonight, and obviously we won't be making decisions tonight, but we'll have a series of meetings leading up to when we do. So with that, I will ask for a motion to convene into the committee room in, let's say, 10 minutes.
Mayor Tully, I move that this council recess into the committee room in about 10 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are going to recess into the committee room and reconvene in about 10 minutes. Obviously, all those interested, we encourage you to join us. And if not, thank you and good night.
First budget meetings.
We are reconvening into the committee room to discuss adoption of the fiscal year 2018 budget in lieu of passage of an appropriation ordinance. We're not taking any action tonight. This is, I've been told, one of 10
Correct, Mayor?
potential budget meetings that we'll be having before its adoption. And tonight's the first of that series. So I will turn it over to Village Manager Dave Fieldman to introduce this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the first of many meetings regarding the FY18 proposed budget. This budget, like many others before it, is the implementation of council direction previously provided in things like long-range plans and comprehensive plans and a myriad of other plans. So what that means is, if you've been following along over the last year or so, that there are no real surprises in this proposed budget. The budget process is participative and transparent. As the mayor just mentioned, 10 public meetings. The budget as proposed at this point is posted on our village website and has been posted since mid to late September. It's also a deliberative process. It takes about 3 months to go from publication to adoption. The budget adoption itself can happen anytime between November throughout December, and the adoption of the property tax levy could take place anytime in December. I want a couple of notes here before we move on. Staff has met individually with each council member for a thorough review of the budget prior to coming into this meeting, and many questions have already been asked, and the answers are published on our website. I also want to take a moment to thank the staff members who put together this proposed budget, led primarily by our finance director, Judy Butney, and by our management analyst, Megan Miles. The work has been fantastic and reflective of the direction provided by the village council, so thank you very much. It's a lengthy document, but we wanted to summarize the 8 key points. Starting with the general fund. The general fund, our main operating fund, has a planned use of reserves this year of $320,000. This is due entirely to the temporary holdback 10% of state income tax as a revenue source that runs for a specified period of time. Since it is measurable both in dollar amounts and specified time, that is the reason we're comfortable proposing a planned use of reserves budget. Also, maintaining our fund balances at the recommended level of 39%, which is looked favorably upon by the rating agencies. Second key point, this budget does include the food and beverage tax revenue of about $1.5 million, which was adopted in July of this year and becomes effective in January. This budget also includes an increase in the public safety pension levy. This is a requirement of state law of just over $550,000. There is, however, again, no increase in the property tax levy for operations. This is year number 7 of that streak. This no tax increase is made possible by further staffing reductions. Another 2 full-time equivalent positions proposed to be eliminated with this budget. However, nobody is losing their jobs. These positions have become vacant previously, and this is due to attrition, retirements specifically. We'll go through those 5 key points in a little bit more detail tonight. The other 3 key points we'll talk about at next week's meeting, and they include, this budget does reflect funding to implement the direction provided on village facilities. It does include a contribution to other post-employment benefits unfunded liability, which was a priority action item discussed in long-range planning. And this budget, of course, reflects and includes money for continued investment in all of our infrastructure systems. While this budget was well prepared, diligent, and thoughtful, there are a couple of things that pose risks to our budget, things where we could be incorrect. The 3 key ones we wanted to highlight. Number 1, the food and beverage tax revenue. Given that this is our first year of the food and beverage tax, we may be off in the amount of revenue that it creates. It could be more than the $1.5 million, could be less. Same thing, another risk related to a revenue source. Sales tax revenue has been fluctuating, generally declining for several of the past 12 months, but in the last 2 months has been increasing again. So we could be a little bit off in our sales tax revenue budget number. And finally, one that we've been talking about for 10 years running now is the risk that the state budget actions could affect the village's budget. Specifically, the state could take steps that could reduce our revenues or increase our costs, and that's been a big real concern as the state continues to deal with budget concerns. I want to move now to the middle whiteboard and start talking about our general fund. This is the village's main operating fund. Most of the services you think of from the village are paid for through this fund. The story here with the numbers on this whiteboard is a story of strong cost control measures, continued cost control measures. Also, continued significant increase in the cost of public safety pension, again required by state law. And on the revenue side, the story is continued flat or declining revenues bolstered by the new food and beverage tax. We'll take a closer look at expenses right here on the whiteboard. Expenses for 2018 are budgeted to increase only 1.1% compared to the FY17 budget. Personnel expenses, which account for about 3/4 of our total expenses in this fund, are budgeted to increase by only $430,000, which is 1.2%. Non-personnel expenses are budgeted to increase by less than 1% compared to last year's budget. These expense increases are due primarily, almost entirely, to the $550,000 increase in the required public safety pension contributions. We have cost savings, particularly on the personnel expense side, that are offsetting that increase. These cost savings are driven by staffing reductions, retirements in a couple areas that will not be filled, a net reduction of 2.0 in FTEs, and also retirements in the police and fire department. Long-tenured employees retired and being replaced by newer employees that have a lower overall cost to the village. So those are our cost savings that are driving these cost control measures. Turning now to our general fund revenues in the middle whiteboard here. Total revenues are budgeted to be about the same as the FY17 budget and about $1.4 million more than the FY17 estimates. So flat to the budget for 17, $1.4 million more than revenues we think we're going to collect this year. Most major revenue sources continue to be flat or declining. Sales tax, our number one revenue source, is budgeted to be flat compared to the FY17 estimate and $900,000 less than the current year's budget. Income tax is budgeted to be about $100,000 less than this year's estimate, $600,000 less than this year's budget. This is primarily due to the state's 1-year 10% holdback of state income tax. You can see why the food and beverage tax is necessary to replace lost revenues. The food and beverage tax is budgeted to generate $1.5 million in FY18, replacing lost and declining sales tax and income tax revenue. One of the revenues that is up is related to, again, the required contributions to public safety pensions. It's the property tax levy designed to make sure we cover those contributions. So it shows up not only on the cost side, but that $550,000 also shows up on the revenue side in the form of a property tax levy. And that is a nice segue into a very brief summary of our overall property tax. The total village property tax levy is proposed to increase by 4.3%. Numbers right here in blue. This is driven entirely by the increase in the required public safety pension levy. All other components of our levy are budgeted to remain exactly the same. The impact of this tax levy on a typical residential unit with a market value of about $300,000 and a taxable value of about $100,000 to be somewhere in the range of $24 to $25 in 2018. And you think to yourself, well, these numbers here on the board don't reflect a tax bill for a property like that. Certainly most properties pay much more than $580 some. That's true. Your overall tax bill is much larger than this. This is because the village portion of the tax bill is about 9% of the total tax bill. We have a wonderfully drawn graphic here that I did myself that shows the breakdown. School districts about 68%, the village under 10%, and all others around 22%.
It's a great likeness of Washington.
Yes, I decided not to actually draw President Washington in there. That was an incredibly brief overview of the general fund and property tax levy. However, we believe the story is the same story we've been saying for months, going back to long-range planning, and all the council members have been briefed individually on this. And so with that, Mayor, we have our entire budget team here. Happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we'll take a break for those questions and comments right now.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to pick up on a suggestion that Commissioner Wallace made, which is we're going to start with public comment. Any questions or comments? I caught you off guard, didn't I? Questions or comments from members of the public on what's been presented? All three of those? Only if you do it in three-part harmony. It's okay, we'll come back to you.
Is there further action?
Yes? No? No? Okay, just checking. All right, thank you. Questions or comments? Obviously, this is one of many meetings, but anything that anyone wants to weigh in on at this juncture? Commissioner Barnett?
No.
Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, Dave, I think you missed your true calling.
I thought if he added fangs, it could kind of be kind of Chocula.
Anyway, you're absolutely right on the risks to the budget, but I mean, I don't think we can necessarily count on the state's ineptitude, basically, in only being a one-year thing. I think we've got pretty good evidence demonstrating that it's not. The 10% holdback, I just don't think we can assume that it's a one-time thing. It may not be exactly a 10% holdback. Maybe it'll be 15 or 5 next time. Maybe we'll find some other vehicle to reach their hand into the pocket of local government. But I don't think we can count on this being a one-time. We know that our costs increasing is not a one-time thing. And I'm still struggling with the idea of a deficit budget. Dipping into reserves is warranted in certain situations. I'm not sure that the state's ineptitude is one of those situations. Nobody in this room or at this table wants to talk about raising taxes. But I think absent another idea that doesn't involve a reduction in service levels, it's a conversation we ought to have. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck, you look pensive.
Yeah. No, introductory comments, I want to, I mean, you know, we're going to be talking about this, there's a lot more detail, but I want to thank staff for coming in with the budget they have. We know why we have to increase our taxes. I think not having an increase for, 5 years for operations, I think that's a great job, but I also wonder if it's the right thing to do. Everybody gets higher bills. There's higher electric, higher cable, higher phone. Gas is kind of iffy, but you know, everything's going up, and for 5 years to kind of keep things flat, except for the pensions, it's a tough job, and I'm not quite sure that it's entirely the right thing to do. Although it was a good job. Looking at the graphic, I'm beginning to wonder if we go back a few years, wasn't it more like 10% rather than 9%? And because the other entities are increasing, we're actually going down.
Yeah, it's been as high as
9 to
the
10.
10s. It's been as low as the 8s, depending on a variety of factors, I guess.
So, I thought it was good news. We're getting to be less and less of the total tax bill. I do have a couple of suggestions I'd like to talk about, and I want my fellow council members to think about it. Facilities has been a problem for years. We didn't do anything particularly this year, but we should have been putting money away for facilities for a long time. And I would like to have everyone consider the possibility of adding revenue, probably on property taxes, since if we had come to a conclusion earlier in the year, people would be paying more. And so maybe we had to start socking more money away for facilities, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, or 10 years, whenever we get this resolved. We should be putting money away, so I would consider some sort of an increase to be put into that facilities fund, even though We'll have the gas tax and the forfeiture fund and the other things. I'd still like to sock a little more money away for facilities, because sooner or later, whenever we pull the trigger on that, people are going to get hit, so we might as well start now and make the hit, spread it out over a longer period of time. Secondly, not a super big deal, but I mentioned it before, we spent some time on dog facilities this year, and it occurred to me that when they call them guests, they're doggy hotels. We have a hotel tax. I think it's time that we consider having a doggy hotel tax. Roughly speaking, depending on how you count the number of rooms available, I think it was something like 130 or more, and staff looked into it a little further. But rough estimate at about $2 a night per dog, that would draw approximately $100,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. We have some human services things that we do. We don't have to designate that money for any type of human services, but it would cover costs of our Meals on Wheels. It would cover maybe some of the taxi subsidy. I mean, it doesn't have to go to something like that, but certainly $100,000 is nothing to sneeze at, and it would make dogs a better friend to people. So just food for thought as an added revenue source. And I throw that out there and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Others? No? Just a few things. One, I agree with Commissioner Jose. Only the magic 8 ball can tell us what's going to happen from the state and what other revenue graphs there might be. But the food and beverage tax is a replacement tax. It's designed to replace lost revenue from declining sales tax due to macroeconomic factors and trends. And I'd like it to stay that way. What I don't know how to do is how to calibrate it so that we're only replacing what we need to replace, and it doesn't sort of take on a life of its own. Understanding that there may be other things to replace. I get that. So I don't have anything more than a concept to share with you at this point, but it's a good thing this is meeting number 1. I'll give that some more thought. Number 2, I know that at least I've mentioned before, and without too much violent objection, that let me ask a question: where in our what line of our budget would we put impact fees?
Right now, it would show up in this
in the other
category of the other, but it would be permits, licenses, and fees. I think is a line item in the pages in your budget.
And we've talked about how there are impact fees that go to other taxing bodies, like the park district and the school district, and I've at least floated the notion in the past that we have either a portion of that impact fee, or a portion would be fine, or a new category that would be creating a fund to deal with historic preservation. And one of the challenges that we've always had about historic preservation as a village is we have no money laying around to do anything with to facilitate some of the goals. And certainly don't want to tax anybody for it, but to the extent that there is an impact fee that can be developed that would be, Enzo could give me the exact language, that is sufficiently related to an impact on an actual historic situation, that we could derive an impact fee like one that is driven by impact upon the schools, impact upon the parks. Why not impact upon our motto of preserving the balance between tradition and progress? To the extent that we can properly designate that as such, that's something I would like to explore. It's not really a revenue generator, because it could just carve out of the existing impact fees and a new category. But that would be a fund or an account that would be new, that would then, I think, allow the village to facilitate, I think, more through actual means in terms of historic preservation, which we currently do not have. And then third, the only interesting and intriguing thoughts, Commissioner Waldeck, I always appreciate creativity, The one thing that I'm going to say, though, and I'm going to channel former Commissioner Schnell when I do this, is there's this old report called the Cummings-McNulty Report, which was the basis for the original hotel motel tax that we have had for many years. And if I remember correctly, and I'm paraphrasing, the basis and the justification for implementing that tax in the first place was it was designed to generate revenue that would contribute towards basically tourism. The idea being that the hotels and motels would, the visitors to the hotels and motels would pay was it 8%? I forget what it is.
That's right.
Would pay some. There would be a tax that would generate some funds, and those funds then would be used, ideally, to facilitate things that would attract more people to come and visit and stay in hotels and motels. I think there's a consistency there with visiting restaurants as well. But my only concern, and I don't mean to be funny when I say this, but if we had a doggy tax, would we then have to create things that would drive more canines to our community?
Well, their parents have left to go spend their money somewhere else, so them leaving them behind.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's a correlation there. That's what I was working for, a correlation. But anyway,
No, I wasn't thinking of the...
always appreciate creativity.
But we do spend it. I mean, we did spend a lot of time talking about doggy hotels this year.
Yes, we did. Commissioner Jose.
Thanks, Mayor. And I don't necessarily want to cut anybody else off. Anybody else wants to jump in.
I don't see anybody clamoring for the microphone.
Yeah, once you suggested we ought to talk about raising taxes, people tend to clam up. And I agree with your characterization on the food and beverage tax as a replacement. I know that's the idea behind it. I get that 100%, and I agree that we don't want to make it any higher than it needs to be in any given instance. One of the things that we've held fast to over the last 6 years, and we'd like to continue it as long as we can, but obviously all good things come to an end at some point, is the idea of keeping the property tax levy for operations flat. Another way to potentially look at it is, well, let's keep the tax rate flat. As it turns out, due to the growth in equalized assessed value, I think it's about 4.8% if memory serves, the tax rate on the typical resident of Cottage Grove will actually drop. Or at least it's not rising as fast. Dave, correct me on this.
It drops because the estimated EAV growth, the taxable value, is 4.8%. The property tax rate increase, or property tax levy increase is 4.3, so it would be, in theory, a slight reduction. There's other factors involved at other levels of government, but basically it would be a slight reduction in the rate.
But at least vis-a-vis the village, it's going down about 0.5%. Yeah, I don't like the idea of raising the property tax for the simple fact that your home is the most illiquid asset you have. It's not an ATM, and government shouldn't treat it that way. But we do have bills to pay. And if we could get to a flat rate, that would close a portion of the gap. It's $320,000 right now. Back of the napkin, it's what, about $150,000 or so. So it gets you about halfway there.
It would just be, I think, if you're talking about applying that there, we can give you some numbers for you. We'll get that for you. So the question is, if we tried to target a flat rate, how much would the resulting levy be?
Correct.
I think we can track that number down.
Just a thought.
Anyone else? Anyone else feeling pensive?
Another quick thought, when I talked about increases or setting money aside for facilities, was reading that District 99 letter. They're going to plan on collecting money, about $65 per a $300,000 home for their facilities. So with the amount of money that they're already collecting and adding another $65, I think us taking money, putting it aside for facilities is still a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Well, everyone's noodling. Any further public comment? Yes, please. Todd.
Kind of along Craig's lines, with the 320, when you kind of peel back into these fund summaries, you were talking about the overall, but I mean, you look at the risk management, it was projected to be $200,000 negative this fiscal year budget. Next year it's 409, which, understanding that you don't know what those claims are going to be, but really our budget is more than that, because you're talking 400, it's funded by your general fund, so in theory you're 700 in a hole. Similarly on the fleet services, well, that one I don't know that you really need a whole lot of cash in there, but those cash reserves that you had in there in the future were good, and we've been spending those down year over year. And again, I don't know that you really need a whole lot of cash in fleet services, but right. And then the last one was, did you not buy a vehicle this year on the equipment?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, if I could, Mayor, I just, such a great lead-in by Mr. Paradis there. The traditional next step in our presentation is a quick summary of 4 funds that are related to the general fund. They are shown here behind me. They're the ones that Mr. Paradis just kind of walked us through. They are the health fund, the risk fund, fleets and equipment replacement funds. These funds are related to the general fund very closely in a sense that these are designed to pay for certain specific things, as the names would imply. Fleet is our vehicle fleet. And they are hardly ever balanced in any one particular year, but over 5 to 10 year periods, they tend to balance out over that horizon. There's a little bit of variability. You can see the numbers here. We've been doing a good job of controlling costs in all of these funds, and so we try to get the fund balance basically as close to zero as we can, the cash balance in these funds. So Mr. Paradis really kind of took my whole presentation about how that works, so thank you. But we're happy to answer any questions there. One of the things when you start managing 5 funds together is the first concept is every single dollar counts. We are stewards of the public's money. It's very important to us to be fiscally prudent. You're talking about $50, $60, $70 million, the $320,000 planned use of reserve can fluctuate greatly, and it's probably within the margin of error. So is this a balanced budget? Can we bring it in balanced? We'll see how it goes throughout the year depending on performance in 4 other funds, and particularly the revenue in food and beverage and sales tax. If the council would like any further presentation or has any questions about the 4 other funds, then that's traditionally been Judy's presentation, so she's here to answer any questions related to those funds as well.
Thanks. Further public questions or comments on those funds? Any questions or comments from the council?
The budget to me is pretty dissatisfying. We're talking about doing essentially the same things as we've done before, incurring the same risks as we've always incurred, and having a little bit of a deficit. And a deficit, I understand Dave's point, it could arguably be a rounding error or an operational effect change that washes at the end of the year. Certainly, we've seen that over years. But nothing about sales tax revenue, state budget actions is new, and nothing about that is going to change. To Greg's point, there's no reason to expect that all of a sudden Springfield's going to sort it out and the economy's going to take off and we're going to be flush. And so I have a hard time accepting the idea that we're going to essentially do the same things. We're not going to do facilities. There's a host of things we're not going to do that have been on everybody's list. And we're going to just have a few less personnel and therefore have a slight deficit budget. That sounds to me like a lot of action for no gain. And I think we should be balanced to start with, at least intentionally out of the gate. We missed opportunities on food and beverage tax rates to do that. There's other opportunities to do that just within the existing budget. But then I think that whether it's Bill's point on facilities or Greg's point about the long-term state risks, just holding serve is not, guys. We've had this conversation time and again, and we just keep being thrilled that we held our property taxes because that's awesome. But at some point, we're going to run out of staff to reduce. At some point, we're going to run out of senior employees who are going to retire. And at some point, we're going to have to build a building. And, maybe it won't be us, maybe. But I don't think we're doing, I don't think we're acting as stewards. I don't think we're acting as trustees to just hold serve on property taxes and have that be our primary and apparently driving focus.
Thank you, Bob. I think these are all issues that, regardless of what this council does, should be made a high awareness and priority for the community, because they have opportunity to directly express, well, they have their opportunity to directly express their views all the time, but I think on a more widespread basis in about a year. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make clear that the whole community has opportunity to weigh in on what they think and where they want stuff to go. And they probably have one of the most significant opportunities to do so in about a year than in recent history. And I think I can take away a lot of this trepidation and concern. The community can speak directly to the point. And I think it's our job to educate them, and we'll find out. They'll speak, they'll tell us exactly what they think. They've done it before, they'll do it again. Other questions, comments? All right, well, more to come.
And we can continue with that education and engagement for next Tuesday and several Tuesdays throughout the month of October and November. So thank you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you to everyone for your thoughts and comments, and obviously we'll continue the conversation as we go along, and we'll continue to encourage more input and comments from the public. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you and good night.